Hello again, English 10. This is the second video that has to do with Montag's dream. I'm going to discuss the second prompt. I'm going to read that prompt and then kind of go over where to find the answer, I guess, in the book. The prompt says, at the end of Montag's daydream about the hayloft, it says, this was what he wanted now, some sign that the immense world would accept him and give him the long time he needed to think all the things that must be thought. How does Montag's daydream about sleeping in the hayloft of a barn signify his hopes for life outside of his former society? Why is a girl who resembles Clarisse part of this hope? And please remember that Clarisse is not a love interest, even though they have discussed love and they are friends, and you could say that Montag does love her. It's a platonic friendship type love that he feels for Clarisse. And probably a respect, really, as well, because she kind of has opened his eyes to what life really can be like when you're not plugged into the parlor walls. Okay, so the whole daydream happens while he's still in the river, okay, before he kind of acknowledges that he's kind of terrified, basically, to leave the river. Because the world outside of society is very scary. And so he has this daydream because it basically is representing his hope that he's going to be kind of accepted into society, okay? So he wants not society, into this new world, I guess, okay? He already had been a part of his society. He knew how to play by the rules, which if you watched the previous video, you know this. And now he's in this new space, this green space, okay, this wild world, where he doesn't know the rules, and he wants this world to accept him, okay? He wants to learn the rules of this world. He wants the time that he needs to kind of think about all of the things that he's learned in this very, very short amount of time. And I don't know, I mean, we live in Indiana. I didn't grow up here, but there is kind of this laziness, I guess, to, and it's not really laziness, but this just kind of comforting slowness to being in a hayloft, and kind of feeling that warmth and kind of slowness of like a midday in the barn. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It's just kind of like a slower pace of life it reminds you of, without all of the rush. And so he's kind of daydreaming about this as well. He's lived in this rushed society where there's so much distraction, Denim's dentifrice commercials, and all of that to distract every moment of every day. And now he's in this hayloft and he has this time to himself, or he's daydreaming basically that he will have this time to himself. And not only will he have this time to himself, but then there will be this woman who's very similar to Clarisse, and without even knowing him, will leave him this glass of milk and this apple, basically as a symbol of acceptance into this new world. And so that's what he's hoping for. He's hoping that he'll be accepted. And that's basically what the daydream is all about. The reason that the woman resembles Clarisse, is because Clarisse is the one who opened his eyes to this entire world. And if you read a little bit further, which you should have read a little bit further, if you read to the end of the reading for last week, page 138, he does finally hit the railroad tracks. And then if you remember when he first meets Clarisse, do you remember how she talked all of the time about how things smelled, okay? The first time that he met her, he talked about how her, she smelled like strawberries or something, or the space that she had been standing in just previously smelled like strawberries. And then she talked about how the falling leaves smelled like cinnamon. And then he goes on, after he kind of gets over that fear of the hound still being on his tail, he starts noticing all of the smells around him. So I'm going to read that part. It's at the bottom of page 137 to page 138, and this will probably be on page 67 of your digital copy. It says, there must have been a billion leaves on the land. He waded in them, a dry river smelling of hot cloves and warm dust. And the other smells. There was the smell like a cut potato from all the land, raw and cold and white from having the moon on it most of the night. There was a smell like pickles from a bottle and a smell like parsley on the table at home. There was a faint yellow odor like mustard from a jar. There was a smell like carnations from the yard next door. He put down his hand and felt a weed rise up like a child brushing him. His fingers smelled of licorice. He stood breathing, and the more he breathed the land in, the more he was filled up with the details of the land. He was not empty. There was more than enough here to fill him. There would always be more than enough. So I'm going to go a little bit further. He hits the railroad track, and it says, here was the path to wherever he was going. Here was the single familiar thing, the magic charm he might need a little while to touch, to feel beneath his feet as he moved on into the bramble bushes and the lakes of smelling and feeling and touching. Among the whispers and the blowing down of leaves, he walked on the track. And he was surprised to learn how certainly he suddenly was of a single fact he could not prove. Once, long ago, Clarisse had walked here, where he was walking now. So that kind of brings it full circle, hopefully, for you, especially if you watched the video before about how he was worried entering into this new space, this wild green space where he doesn't know any of the rules. He hits the railroad, he daydreams first about being accepted into this new land, and then he hits the railroad, which kind of signifies, I guess, the beginning of that acceptance. And all of the swirling smells all around him should hopefully remind you of Clarisse and her curiosity and the way that she noticed even the smallest things. And that's kind of what points him to thinking Clarisse was here at some point. Okay, so she's kind of ever on his mind, I guess, because she opened his eyes to what life could be like. So hope that was helpful. Stay tuned for another video where I will discuss the third prompt.